This is just for question 5 on paper 1. That's your descriptive writing. It's worth 40 marks, so it's important. It's a quarter of the exam. So I'm going to explain, we'll go over some past papers first of all. We'll have a look at what the questions have looked like in past exams. We'll talk a little bit about what you're expected to do and look at the mark scheme, how you're going to work your way up the mark scheme, and then we'll have a look at a plan for a descriptive piece of writing that should help you to structure your writing and write enough in the exam. Okay, let's quickly go through some past exam papers, and you can pause the video if you want to have a go at any of these later. You'll be given 2 options in question 5 if you remember, and one of them will be based on a picture. It's supposed to be helpful, it's supposed to be a starting point, it's not supposed to restrict you. So you can certainly go outside of that picture as much as you want. So describe a marketplace, it says here, and again you're not being tested on what you can see in the picture, this is just to get your ideas going. Or write a story with the title abandoned. And I would say don't get too hung up on the difference between a story or a description, okay? I'm going to talk through descriptive writing with you now, and as long as you're describing something clearly, okay, that's the most important thing, and that your piece of writing has some structure to it. So another exam paper, write a description of an old person as suggested by this picture, which I would say don't only write about an old person, just have that as one element of your piece of writing. Or write a story about a time when things turned out unexpectedly. Okay, it's supposed to be very open, could be about absolutely anything. Describe a journey by bus as suggested by this picture. Exam board thinks everybody's been on a bus, surely. So trying to do everybody who takes the exam a favour here and give them something familiar as a starting point. Or write a story about 2 people from very different backgrounds. And finally, we've got this one from last year's November paper. Write a story about time travel as suggested by this picture, or describe life as you imagine it in 200 years' time. I think this one scared a lot of my students because they thought they had to come up with an epic idea. But if you have a look at the plan that I'm going to show you in a minute, you should hopefully see that you can adapt this plan to a description of anywhere. Okay, let's have a look at how this is marked and how the mark scheme works. So what elements of your writing are going to be looked at by the examiner. The 40 marks is split into 24 and 16. 24 for content and organisation and 16 for technical accuracy. So let's have a look what that means. The content is what is inside your writing. What is it? What are you writing about? And have you communicated that clearly? Does the examiner know what it is you're describing, understand what you're trying to say, and the tone or the mood of the piece, have the words been chosen effectively to do the job it's supposed to do? The organisation is the order that you put your writing in. So what do you say first? What do you say next? And how do you link those things together? An obvious feature would be a paragraph as to how you separate out different ideas. And you will use words to link each paragraph to the next. So how does your writing unfold? That's the organisation. And does it feel like a whole piece of writing by the end of it? Technical accuracy, you need to be thinking about, have you got your words in the right order? Have you used sentences effectively? Have you got a good structure? Are they clear? You've not got any words missing. Always check this at the end. Punctuation. What punctuation are you able to use accurately? Full stops, I should hope. Commas, maybe. A lot of people use commas badly, and that's because of the comma splice. Comma splice is used all the time and it's incorrect use of the comma. So if you don't know what I'm talking about and you've never heard of the comma splice before, please look at the thousands of videos. Choose carefully, but there are thousands of YouTube videos about the comma splice. And once you're avoiding bad use of commas, all of your other punctuation will fall into place, I think you'll find. So make sure that before you go in the exam, you feel confident about that. And then of course you've got spelling and vocabulary to be thinking about as well. So all the common words you should have spelt correctly, the ones that you use all the time, but then are you using some high level, unusual, rarely heard words and spelling those correctly as well? So this is how you move up the mark scheme, okay? You need to be thinking about all of those things. And it is a lot to think about. So you've got to practice before you go in the exam. A lot of students think that they're not going to be able to have enough ideas. They run out of things to say on this question. So let's have a look at a plan that will help you to avoid that situation. This is a 4-part plan, and you'll recognise this terminology: set the scene, zoom in, spotlight on a person, shifting focus. All of those linking are words that we use when we're talking about the structure of a piece of writing. You use this in question 3 when you're analysing a text as well. So this is the way that I would think about doing a descriptive piece of writing in an exam, so that I can be clear to the examiner. I'm not trying to do anything fancy or unusual or weird. I don't want to confuse anybody. I don't want any mystery. I want a nice, clear piece of writing. So to set the scene, always when we're setting the scene, it's nice to think about the weather, because give the reader a nice atmosphere. What is it? Is it sunny? Is it cold? What time of year is it? Maybe there's are you outdoors? Are you indoors? Even if you're indoors, is there a window with light shining through? Is the moon shining outside the window? So give the reader, put them in a place and put them in a time immediately. Okay, then you can go further and describe what you can see around you as well, and the more detail the better. Then we're going to, that might be 1 or 2 paragraphs, however many paragraphs you see fit, and then you're going to zoom in, just like a film might go from a wide shot showing everything, and then this close-up zooms in on a person. It doesn't have to be a person, it could be an animal, it could be a car, it could be anything, but you're going to describe that then. This is your opportunity to maybe demonstrate that you can use good punctuation in a list. Okay, list the clothes that somebody's wearing, and what are they doing, okay, and how are they doing it. Detail: are they biting their nails? Are they sleeping? Is it a cat? Is the tail twitching? Describing as much detail as possible to give that picture. And then we want something to happen, and I don't mean something dramatic like an earthquake. I just mean a little bit of action. Maybe somebody walks into the space, maybe someone walks in the room, maybe we go to the other side of a park and something's happening. So shifting focus. What else is going on? You could put a conversation in here if you're confident using speech marks, or maybe the person that was there just gets up and does something. So have a think about that, how you can grow that scene and develop it. And then we're going to go back to the first paragraph and think of this as the zoom out again. So we've looked at everything in the first, setting the scene, then we've zoomed in on a person, we've shifted over here to talk about something else, or something's happened, and now we're zooming out and the camera's showing the whole place again, linking back to the beginning. So then we're going to mention, if you mentioned the moon at the beginning, mention the moon again. Maybe it's disappeared behind a cloud now. That will just finish it off nicely and link it back. A few little reminders before we go on to an example. Don't make the reader do the work. You have to give them everything, okay? This means that it's not up to the reader to use their imagination. This is about your imagination. Okay, so tell them everything they need to create that picture in their mind. I would always recommend using third person, and I'm going to presume you know what that means. A lot of students like to write in first person, and that's fine. You can, but third person just gives you a little bit more freedom to move around a space. So you can be in one side of a building and then you can be in the other side, because you can talk about everything, because it's not just from one perspective. And stick to past tense, I would usually say, or at least stick to one tense, past or present. Don't mix them up. And when you check over your writing at the end, check that you're not switching your verbs from past tense and then to present tense. Stick to one, and always check this. So the example here, the old woman picked up the wooden spoon and began eating the ice cream out of the tub. Picked up and began are past tense verbs. Now you can write in present tense. That would be the old woman picks up the wooden spoon and begins eating the ice cream. That is also fine, but it's more usual to use past tense when we're telling a story. So just make sure that you check your verbs anyway and make sure they're all consistent and the same. And the other, just a little reminder, good writing does not need drama, earthquakes, floods or aliens, in the exam especially, okay? It's really hard to write about drama, and it's not in the mark scheme. Big ideas is not in the mark scheme. You don't get more marks for your big ideas. So stick to clear writing about simple things, I would say, familiar things that you know is always going to be more convincing. You want to be convincing. Let's have a look how we would put that plan into action then for this example from a past paper. Write a story about time travel as suggested by this picture, and we're going to use our descriptive writing plan to write a little bit of a story. Okay, so we've got 4 parts. We're going to set the scene, zoom in on a person, have a shift in focus, and then we're going to finish off. Nice and simple. I'm not going to write a full piece of writing here. I'm going to get you going with each section, and then if you want, you can expand on it and grow it yourself into a full piece of writing. So set the scene first of all. I've started you off here. I've left these 2 lines with the expectation that you'll come up with some more ideas, maybe inspired by this picture, maybe inspired by something that you can't see but from your imagination. So the sun streamed in through the high arched windows of the busy train station. It was early evening and workers were making their way home. I've decided it's early evening. You can change that. It could be any time of day. It's your story. It's your descriptive writing. You can say whatever you want. You might want to say, describe the whole building. What does it remind you of? It's like a cathedral. It's huge. It's vast. Look at the high ceilings. There are people stood around buying tickets, maybe talking to each other. What can you hear? Can you hear the loudspeaker? Can you hear people talking? Footsteps maybe on the hard floor. Anything you want, just put in there so you've got this full picture for the reader. Then we're going to zoom in on one person. You can choose anybody. I've chosen a young girl, and I can't actually see a young girl in that picture. This is in my imagination. I wanted a young girl. So a young girl with her mother stared at the sun rays in awe. She could see the dust particles in the air and imagined they were fairies. Okay, I'm using third person because then I can tell you what's going on inside someone else's head. Okay, this is what I mean by third person being a little bit more, you're a little bit more free to say what everybody in your descriptive writing is thinking. Okay, you can say so much more about that young girl. What's she wearing? What else is she doing? Grow that into a full paragraph. Then let's have a shift in focus, and we're going to introduce somebody else into the scene. Just where the sunlight hit the shiny floor, the figure of a man walked slowly towards them. The little girl watched him take a device from his pocket to check the time. He was wearing, then we're going to describe what he's wearing, how is he walking, his face, his hair, as much detail as you can to put a picture of that man walking towards the girl as you possibly can. Then I put in here a little bit of a conversation. Okay, this is the only bit that suggests any time travel in this piece of descriptive writing or this story. "Excuse me, but could you tell me the date?" he asked the girl's mother. And on hearing her reply, "And what year is it, please?" So that's just a little hint at the possibility of some time travel. Okay, and you've most importantly used some nice punctuation there and shown the examiner that you know how to use speech marks correctly. Then we're going to finish it off. The sun was going down, linking back to the sun in the first paragraph, and the station darkened. An announcement over the loudspeaker startled the little girl, who dropped her gloves. She bent down to pick them up, and when she stood up, the strange man was nowhere to be seen. So you can adapt this piece of writing now and complete it if you want. There are only 161 words here, but my expectation is that you'd be able to write at least twice that in 45 minutes. So I'm going to post some more examples of descriptive writing up that follow this same plan, and you can get busy making some examples for yourself. Remember, zoom in, detail, detail, detail. Okay, good luck.